Okay, students, are you listening to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We have discussed in our last lecture about phytoremediation, right? So some students have some misunderstanding regarding this topic. So we will discuss again some uh, important topics, important points about of this topic again, right? Um, uh, you are not allowed to have any question or ask any question during the lecture, but you can ask questions afterwards. After I just finish the lecture, you can ask your questions, right? So all of you just mute your microphones so that I can start. Uh, you can see the slides, Aisha. You can see the slides. Our slides are visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right. So we will start our lecture. We have discussed that what is phytoremediation. It is basically the natural ability of plants to basically um contain, degrade, or remove toxic chemicals or pollutants which are present in the contaminated soil or water, right? Any kind of contaminant like metal, pesticides, solvents, explosives, food oil, whatever is the contamination that can be removed by using the plants. As you know, phytoremediation, it is a combination of two words. Phyto means plant and remediation means to clean up or to remedy. So the number of plants that can be used for this purpose, for example, sunflower, ragweed, cabbage, and geranium, they can be used for this purpose, right? So plants are often used in combination with some other traditional technologies for cleaning up contaminated soil sites, right? Because there are some limitations regarding the phytoremediation, right? So there are some advantages of using the plant for the remediation, or there are some disadvantages as well. So advantages, when we talk about advantages, basically it is economically friendly, right? It doesn't cause any kind of damage to the environment, or it is not harmful to the environment. That's why it is economically friendly. Secondly, it is aesthetically pleasing and it is very cheaper, or it is cost effective, as you can easily grow the plants and you can decontaminate the soil or water, right? Another advantage is that plants, for example, if any soil or water is contaminated with, and you are using the plants for the process of bioremediation, and afterwards you can, if that metal is very precious, you can basically harvest that metal from the, or you can just recover the metal from that plant biomass, right? Um, Another advantage is phytoremediation. It reduces the contaminants to enter the environment, or they prevent their leakage into the underground system, right? So these are the some of the advantages of phytoremediation, and then comes the disadvantages. So as you know, is a natural process, and it depends on the plant's ability. So it's a very slow process, and just unmute, just mute your microphone. It's a very slow process and it's a very time taking process, right? As it just depends upon the plant's natural ability to decontaminate the soil or the water, right? Another advantage is, as you know, plants take any nutrient, or in this case when we say we are using the plant for the process of bioremediation, so plants will basically absorb those contaminants or those contaminants which they can use as a nutrient through the help of their roots, right? So they can only take up only those contaminants or only those metals which are within the reach of their root, right? Like for herbaceous plants, they have 3 to 6 feet underground roots, and trees, they are 10 to 15 feet underground, right? Another disadvantage of phytoremediation is that sometimes there is a very poisonous metal which is present in the contaminated soil or water, and it causes potential risk. It is basically a potential risk to the food chain if any animal basically feed upon that plant. As you know, the plants are eaten by animals, so plant don't have a knowledge that which plant basically have decontaminated soil or water. They have taken any chemical or pollutant, so it's a potential risk when the contaminant or pollutant basically entered the food chain, right? So next are the types of remediation. So basically, there are 5 types of phytoremediation, but it all depends what type of contaminant basically plants have taken up, or they have basically taken it as a nutrient, right? So if the contamination is metal based, or we can say for metal contamination, there are 3 types, that is phytoextraction, second one is rhizofiltration, and third one is phytostabilization, right? And if the contaminants that are taken up by the plant are the organic chemicals, then there are 2 types, that is phytotransformation and rhizosphere bioremediation, or plant assisted bioremediation, or rhizodegradation, right? So first we talk about phytoextraction. So in phytoextraction, what happens is if there is contaminated soil where the metal contaminants are present, so plants basically absorb those contaminants through their roots, and then they move those contaminants into the upper portion of the plant. That is, they can move it into their stems and leaves. And for the process of phytoextraction, hyperaccumulator plants are used basically in this process. The reason for that is that the hyperaccumulator plants are those plants which have the ability to take 5 to 100 times more metals or more contaminant as compared to an ordinary plant. So after the metals are taken up by the hyperaccumulator plants, these plants are then harvested and then discarded appropriately. It may also be possible that you can recover the original metal from these plants, right? So it's a phytoextraction. Next one is rhizofiltration. So what happens in rhizofiltration if there is a contaminated water, or uh, contaminants are present in water? So this method basically applies to the surface and the groundwater remediation, right? In this process, metals are basically extract either by absorption through the roots of the plants, or indirectly through the root absorption. Absorption, as you know, okay, plants will absorb the metal, but what do you mean by absorption? Absorption means the metals are basically attracted to plants and they are held by the roots of the plant, right? So for the rhizofiltration, first of all, plants that can be used for the process of rhizofiltration, they are grown in clean water, and then when they have fully grown, they are then transplanted to the contaminated water sites where there is a metal contamination. So after some times, when root becomes saturated with metals, the plants are again harvested, and new one. If there is some contaminant remaining in that water, the new plants are planted on that contaminated site, right? Next is the phytostabilization. These plants, in addition to basically bioremediate the contaminated site, they basically stabilize the environment as well. That's why the name is that type is known as phytostabilization. So plants are used to contain soil and water contaminants, and they reduce their mobility through the surrounding environment, right? This can also be accomplished, like in the rhizofiltration, this can also be accomplished by absorption, either absorption or by adsorption through the plant roots, right? And they basically decrease the process of soil erosion. That is why they basically stabilize that soil as well, in addition to the decontaminating that soil. That's why the name is phytostabilization, right? And next two types are for the organic chemicals. For example, there is a contaminated site where organic chemicals are present and you want to decontaminate that specific site. So first one is phytotransformation. So in this process, plant basically absorbs and break down the organic chemicals that are present in contaminated soil or groundwater by using the metabolic processes, right? Next is rhizosphere bioremediation, or that's also known as rhizodegradation, or it's also known as plant-assisted bioremediation, right? So, what is rhizosphere? It's the area around the root that is known as rhizosphere. So, as you know, they may present many microbes like yeast, fungi, and bacteria in the rhizosphere of the plant. So, what happens is a plants release some kind of natural substances that basically stimulate the growth of these microbes which are present in the rhizosphere, right? And after stimulation, those microbes will carry out the process of bioremediation, right? Plants will just stimulate the microbes in the rhizosphere area, right? That is why this is known as rhizosphere bioremediation or rhizodegradation, or another name that is plant assisted bioremediation, right? So, how does this phytoremediation work? As I have discussed, that it is phytoremediation basically takes advantage of plants' natural ability to absorb, accumulate, or metabolize contaminant from the soil or any other media in which plants grow. So there is an interaction between plants and microbes that lives in the soil, which also contributes to phytoremediation, and is, as in the case of rhizosphere bioremediation or plant-assisted bioremediation, right? So we can say if those contaminants or those metals or those organic chemicals are taken up the plants, won't they be dangerous or damaging to the plant? So the answer of this is, as a part of normal growth and development, plant naturally absorb and metabolize these organic chemicals and metals, right? As you know, some metals are very essential for the plant growth, like zinc, copper. So hyperaccumulated plants are basically used for this purpose. And here are some examples. Approximately 400 plant species have been classified as hyperaccumulators. Examples are grasses, sunflower, corn, flax, alfalfa, tobacco, etc. Right? So this is the diagram about the plants which can be used as a accumulator, right? So and there's also possible that we can use some genetic engineering techniques to make that plant genetically modify for the purpose of bioremediation. Like if we want to reduce the use of pesticides, so what we can do is we can say there is a insect that is having a gene that is responsible for the reduction of use of pesticides. So basically, what we do is, as you have discussed in biotechnology, we will just isolate that gene from the insect, and we will incorporate. We will then place into the specific vector, and then we will place into the host organism, that is the plant, and plant becomes genetically modified, and that plant has the ability, that plant can have the gene which can basically reduce the use of the pest for pesticides for these plants, right? So not only plants, like there is a natural ability present in the plant that they can be used as a phytoremediation. If they can be used in phytoremediation, there is a possibility we can use some genetic engineering techniques or recombinant DNA technology for making that those plants genetically modify if that particular gene is not present in that plant, so that they can carry out the process of phytoremediation, right? So the next is what are the processes for the harvest and disposal of the plant? For example, we are using the plants for the process of bioremediation. I'm sorry, for the process of phytoremediation. So how we can harvest those plants or how we can dispose those plants? So when plants have absorbed and accumulated contaminants, they can be harvested and discarded, right? So if some kind of organic contaminants are degraded, yeah, are taken up by the plants, then they will be degraded into the molecules like water and carbon dioxide, right? Which are not very harmful for the environment, right? So plants, in that case, plants don't require any special method of disposal, right? In some cases, controlled incineration is used. That is a common method that is used to dispose plants that have absorbed a large amount of contamination, right? So what is incineration? It is just burn that plant so that it can produce ashes, right? And from those ashes, then those ashes are then discarded at appropriate waste sites, and through from those ashes we can basically recover those metals that are basically taken up by the plant to that are basically taken up by the plant from the contaminated soil or contaminated water, right? So there are researches going on different methods that how we can recover the original metal from those ashes, right? In addition to this, there are some other common method that can be used. They include sun drying, compositing, and leaching, right? So, what is the relationship of biotechnology and phytoremediation, or what are the current research areas in the phytoremediation? As I have discussed, I guess. Um, Before they we can use different genetic techniques basically to make any plant genetically modify if some kind of gene is not present in those microbes which help the in those plants, which help those plants to basically take up the specific contaminants from the soil or water, right? So many different
दोनों आवाज नहीं आ रही आपकी। हेलो।
the remediation, right? So all this is possible when you are a biotechnologist, when you have the knowledge, right? What type of genes are present in the microbe, you can basically isolate those genes and then you can insert it into the plant so that plant can take up the specific metal or the specific contaminant, right? Then, what are the current research areas in phytoremediation? Researchers are examining the exact mechanism surrounding the metal transports in plants and why some plants can absorb and tolerate high amounts of toxic metals while others can't, as in case of hyperaccumulation, right? So different genes are being cloned and certain plants are genetically modified to tolerate metal contamination, right? Yellow poplar tree have been made genetically modified by some researchers at the University of Georgia, and that popular yellow poplar tree is genetically modified by uh, by basically isolating the mercury-resistant gene that is present in the bacteria and inserting that gene into the yellow poplar plant. As a result, what happened is that yellow poplar tree have the capability to basically live in the soil which is contaminated with mercury, right? Likewise, in Canada, some researchers basically studied the biodiversity of different plants that are present in metal contaminated sites, right? So they found out that they can produce different seed banks. They can basically establish different seed banks from these wild species, and those wild species of plants then can be used at any other metal contaminated site, right? So this is the relationship between the biotechnology and the current research areas in phytoremediation, right? So next we talk about the phytoremediation, natural resources, and sustainable development. So the use of biotechnology is being considered in various industries, like in mining and oil industries, right? In 1997, Saskatchewan Federal Corporation Limited, they planted 203 poplar trees on a site near Kelvington in abandoned gas station that has the underground petroleum pollution, right? So what happens is those plants took most of the petroleum compounds. They basically decontaminated that site. So for that purpose, they use balsam poplar trees for this experiment because there are some characteristics of this balsam tree that they are very hardy, they are fast growing plants, and they are readily available in Saskatchewan, right? An adult poplar tree can take up to 120 liter of water per day. It means it uh, can be large. It can basically decontaminate a large area of the soil, right? So, what is sustainable? What is the relationship between sustainable development and phytoremediation? In order for any technology to be sustainable or to be stable, it should be economically viable or and environmentally compatible, right? So phytoremediation basically use the existing capability of the plants and system they support to clean up contaminated soil and water. It is cheaper process. It is very cost effective than traditional methods. Whereas in traditional method, there's a process of digging up the entire contaminated area and then taking it away from the location for chemical treatment, for the process of incineration, for burial, so that they can decontaminate that particular soil or water. So when we compare phytoremediation with other technologies, we can say that it takes less labor and it does not basically disturb the natural surrounding of the contaminated site, right? Although it takes times, but it can use the natural ability of the plants to decontaminate soil or water. It does not basically destabilize. It does not destabilize the environment, right? So there are some developments of phytoremediation. As I have discussed, that plants can be used for the process of bioremediation. They can be made genetically modified. Likewise, microbes. Likewise, sorry. Microbes can be used for the process of bioremediation. They can be made genetically modified. Likewise, plants can also be made. Plants have the natural ability to take up any contaminant pollutant from the soil, but they can also be made genetically modified by using genetic engineering techniques. So this is emerging technology, basically phytoremediation. In case we use different genetic engineering techniques today, make different plants genetically modified, so that they can live in the decontaminated soil and water, right? So there are some contaminants which are very poisonous, like U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. They seeks to protect human health and the environment from the risk associated with hazardous waste sites, right? And they encourage the development of innovative technologies such as phytoremediation to more efficiently clean up these sites. So arsenic is one of the target of phytoremediation. As you know, arsenic is very carcinogenic. It causes cancer in liver, lungs, and kidney. So there is a need to decontaminate the environment or decontaminate the soil or water from the arsenic where it is present. So a model plant, this is Arabidopsis thaliana, that is a small genome, and its genome is fully sequenced. So it is used as a model plant. It can be made genetically modified. Yeah, it has been genetically modified to express two bacterial genes, that is ARSC and GECS1, right? So these two genes are basically present in bacteria, and this plant is genetically modified by insertion of these two bacterial genes that are basically involved in the detoxification of arsenic, right? So what happens is arsenic, ARSC, that codes for arsenate reductase, right? It's a gene, and that obviously encodes for some kind of enzyme. So ARSC codes for arsenate reductase, which allows the plant to modify arsenate into arsenite, right? So the second gene, that is GECS1, it codes for glutamyl cysteine synthase, which basically makes a thiol that can detoxify the arsenite by forming arsenic protein thioates, and then they are stored in the vacuum, right? In addition to these, there are some high energy compounds like TNT, GTN, RDX, and TETRYL, HMX9. These high energy compounds are very hazardous to the environment. So there's a need to basically bioremediate these high energy compounds as well. So tobacco plants have been genetically modified to express bacterial pentaerythritol tetnite reductase that allow these tobacco plants to take up high energy compounds, and then they reduce them to non explosive substances, right? Then, then there's some other examples of genetically modified plant. Like another plant is made genetically modified by inserting bacterial gene, and that bacterial gene is responsible for encoding the enzyme mercuric reductase that can uptake the mercury from the contaminated soil, and that soil obviously will be contaminated by the mercury. So there are some recent publications of some workers which describe the development of transgenic poplar trees, right? And these poplar trees are basically genetically modified by expressing a mammalian cytochrome P450. Okay, it's a family of enzymes that is commonly involved in metabolism of toxic compounds, right? So the engineered plant, or we can say the engineered popular plant, a populist plant, have then showed the enhanced performance about the metabolism of trichloroethylene and removal of some other volatile organic pollutants like vinyl chloride, carbon tetrachloride, chloroform, and benzene. So there are some ongoing researches on the experiment on the development of phytoremediation, how we can make it more useful for removing different type of contaminants that are present in the contaminated soil and water.